after the Civil War, what we think of as corporations and industry really kind of established itself. Right here you've got Vanderbilt, from like, when you think of like Vanderbilt University. Does anyone know what his industry is based on?
Steel.
Coal.
Nope. Oil. Nope.
Vanderbilt.
Yep, Vanderbilt.
Oh, baseball. Railroad. The people that.
Railroads. Good. Okay. Rockefeller.
Steel.
Nope.
Oh, oil.
Oil. Good. Carnegie.
Oil.
No.
Steel.
Steel.
I knew the last one.
I think. So let me get this done. After the Civil War, people were basically looking for these core things. And they've been looking for this for a while. And this is something that I really, like, I can't express this enough. There's no need currently in our society because we have a high-flowing technological society. Back then, we don't see this, okay? Just to give you an example, from the origins of time to the moment we domesticated animals and figured out how to sail ships, and build ships, okay, to go across the ocean, we have not had a technological advancement until the steam engine, okay? That kind of makes our first movement. Now we're trying to go even faster, farther, and quicker. So transportation's one. Safe lighting. And again, this sounds really, really dumb, but how would you have lit up this room after sunset 100 years ago? Lanterns. So either candles or kerosene, okay? And anyone who drops it, bumps it, you now have a small fire in this room, okay? So it sounds like something that's kind of obvious because now all you gotta do is this, okay? Prior to that, you had to have flames around you at all times, which is dangerous. Remember, most houses back then were made out of aged wood, which, I mean, buildings were lighting on fire all the time because of these accidents. And then finally, better building materials. We think of steel, plastics, heck, even titanium, as pretty common now. Back then, we don't really have any major building materials besides stone, wood, and iron, okay? Now, with iron, it's a metal, yes. What's the problem with iron? A couple things.
Rust.
Too expensive.
It is expensive. What else? It does rust. What else? Can it withstand a lot? Not really. Is it light or heavy? It's also really, really heavy. Yeah.
Doesn't it bend under heat?
Well,
Like not
almost all metal bend under heat, but
Like not a lot.
not a lot of heat. Yes, it's known as a soft metal. So we're going to go through the steel, oil, and train industry to kind of see how these three things are going to be improved. So the first one, railroad industry. We're going to get these done. By 1856, everything up to the Mississippi River had railroad tracks. If you've ever played Monopoly, New York, Pennsylvania, B&O, and Reading railroads were the largest and most popular railroads of the era. But they only went up to the Mississippi River. The Pacific Railroad Act, which is going to create the Transcontinental Railroad, really starts kind of changing the game here. The two biggest railroad tycoons of the era is Thomas Scott of the western portion, which is basically Ohio on over, and the eastern portion is Vanderbilt. Now, the thing about Vanderbilt is all of these guys in this era are going to earn their industries and make them become the largest industries possible. Now, how does this happen? How does Vanderbilt get his industry? Starts off like this. He originally was in ocean shipping, and he got his first dock in New York City through a fist fight. Guy was going to sell him a dock, refuses to sell him because he wanted double, and Vanderbilt said, I will fight you for it. If I win, I get my price. If you win, you get your price. Kicks the guy's butt, knocks him out, pays for the price, and becomes a shipping person. Realizes that trains are going to surpass canals really quickly, and sells off his entire shipping company and goes into railroads. And what he does is, he basically, over the next 20 years, is going to buy up all the major railroads around Albany, Buffalo, Cleveland, and New York City.
would he have been one of the, like, corrupt people that made it curve so they got more money, or is that, like?
That was Transcontinental Railroad.
Oh, okay.
Because what it was with the Transcontinental Railroad, it was a government-made railroad. And so wherever your railroad tracks were, you had a 20-mile on each side window that would become your property from the federal government. That's why they did the waves, so that way you get as much territory as possible. And so Vanderbilt's going to become one of the richest railroad guys because he has control of New York City. Now, how do these guys make their money off railroads? How do you make your money off of that? Yeah.
Shipping things.
Okay, so for every train car, there's freight, and for all the freight, they're basically shipping costs to move these, okay? Just like semis today. Is there trains? Yes. Are they used in as much volume as they were then? Absolutely not. So, at the peak of his power, Vanderbilt has all of this territory. This railroad right here has the most freight coming out of it in the country because that then ships throughout the rest of the country.
Stop, please.
Vanderbilt makes so much money that in the 1870s, he gets to make his own perfect house in North Carolina known as the Biltmore Mansion, which he replicates the French Palace Versailles. That's in North Carolina.
Who lives in that?
What's that?
Who lives in that?
Now it is a museum / bed and breakfast. If you want to, you can stay in these little cottages for $400 a night. Yeah.
Worth it.
Yeah. The Vanderbilt family still owns this, and they do use it for parties and things like that. This is also the people that are going to eventually make the university.
If you murder someone on one side of the house and not hear them.
Oh yeah, yeah. The gardens are immaculate. They've got like tennis courts over here.
That would be awesome.
It's insane.
Murder someone?
Yeah.
Now, he's in charge of the New York Railroad. Person in charge of the Pennsylvania railroads is Thomas Scott. So if you look, he's basically got Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, some more railroads into Cleveland, and works his way over into Iowa, Missouri, etc.
Tom dropped 20 in.
What kind of house does he have?
What's that? He was all about having houses in major cities. So he basically owned out penthouses. He didn't want the big mansions. Then you've got the B&O Railroad, which is owned by various people. Starts off a basic connector to the National Road, remember that from the 1820s, and spreads on out. Then you finally have the Reading Railroad, which is basically what controls all the Philadelphia commerce. Yeah.
So are most of these railroads still railroads, or they change them to
Yes,
railroads?
they're all the same.
Oh.
But if you notice, like for instance, the B&O Railroad is essentially the same path within reason of like the turnpike. So some of this stuff is going to be changed into highways as well. If you notice, Pittsburgh, and you have like Youngstown, Columbus, Cincinnati, Toledo, Cleveland, all these major cities now have major highways, and this is why they're even there. Yeah,
So these aren't used now? Or
they are. They're still used.
They just built roads over some of them?
Yeah, so more or less they're like matching it or similar locations, basically similar paths because if you notice, the railroads are not in this region. Why? What natural barriers there?
The Allegheny.
But the Alleghenies,
Appalachian.
the whole range, Appalachians. Okay. So basically, you got Reading right here. You've got the B&O right here. You've got the New York that goes over this. Okay, and then you've got Scott's Pennsylvania railroads. I can get this down. One of the biggest issues that happens, though, is when they expand out west, states are now going out west, is the Mississippi River. Some parts of the Mississippi River is over a half a mile wide. Okay? So how do you make a bridge with that kind of current? How do you make that work? For the longest time, they had no way to even try to make a bridge, so what they used to do was this. If this is the Mississippi River, they would have two port cities, okay, with railroad track. And what they would do is this. They would unload the one train, put it on a boat, have it cross the river, load it onto the other train, and then continue on, okay? Which sounds simple, but the process itself took approximately 2 days. That's 2 more days of shipping for only crossing a half mile. And so people try to figure out, how to build across the Mississippi River. Would iron be a good material for this?
No.
No, it rusts, right? It oxidizes because of the water, and it's also a soft metal. But they're gonna try. By 1880, just that way you know what's going on out west, by 1880, this is what the railroads are looking like, okay? That's the Transcontinental Railroad right there, okay? And these are basically the branches that are coming off of this. Yes.
What metal was
I
the
actually
railroad
know
made out of?
actually.
What's that? Originally iron. Originally iron, which is not a good thing, right? Rust all the time. You've got to basically have freight constantly going to keep it polished. And they were replacing beams of iron more or less every 2 to 3 years. So it's not, I mean, this is not cheap. Okay? If you ever wonder where the cattle drives went, from Texas up to these railroad tracks right here. Okay, that's where the cattle drives came from. So, in the 1850s, people were trying to be the first person to make a bridge across the Mississippi. Exhibit A, oops. B, oops. And then they're like, we're gonna overbuild it. Well, close enough, right? So, all these don't work. Then we have the steel industry kind of pop up. Now, is steel a new thing by the 1850s?
No.
Absolutely not, okay? Steel was made, perfected, the high carbon surgical steel you think of with all like medical supplies, those were made 800 AD in Japan. Okay, Japan made the best steel in the world like 800 AD, and basically everyone's been basically staying at that level ever since with their katana swords, okay? The samurai sword had the best steel, sharpest blade in the world still today. You could actually cut someone in half from shoulder to hip. Okay, that's how good those katana swords were. Yes, without metal, like metal armor. Yes. Okay. So steel's not a new thing, but you can only make it in small batches. Okay, because of the amount of heat. Because you basically took iron, you added carbon, and you added oxygen to it, heat. Okay, and the carbon would attach to the iron, creating what we think of as steel. Problem is, if you put too much carbon in the iron, you then get cast iron, and if you've ever think of like an old cast iron pan, that's what that turns into. So there's kind of a cooking point, all right? So the big question is, how do you make this on a large scale to basically express the process? The other problem is you can't make any steel beams because, again, the batch itself is too small. This is where we're going to get from England what's known as the Bessemer process. We're going to get just the Bessemer process then. The Bessemer process is going to inject, by steam engine, air into the steel batch, cutting the cost and speed of that pot of steel, going from 1 day to now 15 minutes. Which is a huge, humongous upgrade. Okay? I can't even think of something that basically would be like, instead of looking for a word in the dictionary, being able to Google it. I mean, that's basically the time cut down. Okay? Probably the best example I can give you. This is started off in England. The downside again, does England have a lot of factory space? No, not really. So when it comes over to the United States, we now have the capabilities of making large-scale Bessemer process steel plants. Now, where are they going to go? What cities? Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh is going to make the first really large-scale steel factories. Does anyone know what neighborhood in Pittsburgh?
Why would you want?
What's that? I would, yeah. Pittsburgh neighborhoods. You guys call them, you guys are saying suburbs. Pittsburgh neighborhoods.
Oakland.
Nope. Homestead. Homestead's going to make the first really large scale steel mill. And this is going to be funded by Andrew Carnegie. Now, who initially gives him the money to do this? Get both walls down. Who gives him the money to first do this? Thomas Scott. Scott was the protege of Carnegie. What's interesting about Andrew Carnegie, first generation Scottish immigrant. Father could never find a full-time job that he could be good at. Basically, his dad was kind of a loser. So Carnegie was a paper pusher in Scott's main corporate building where he lived. And Scott liked him and kind of realized he's a very smart kid and put him basically as kind of his go-to gopher. The gopher then became his protege and then eventually his assistant. And Scott liked him so much that he did insider trading with him. Now, this was done today, they'd all be in prison. But back then, if a stock was going to be found to be a surge and you knew the person that knew the tip, they would tell you and you can make tons of money off of it. So Scott gave Carnegie a $1,000 loan and said, take all this money and buy into the stock. That was like $1.50 a share. And he multiplies his money by 35 times and basically keeps doing this. So by his early 30s, Carnegie has over $1 million from the stock market game. He's then going to invest that money plus other business owners and investors into making the first Bessemer steel mill in Homestead. Question?
Is money about equal yet or not?
No. No, you're looking like basically for every $1 then, you're looking about 150 to our dollars.
Oh, so was he a millionaire back then? or-
Yes.
Oh, so he had a bunch of money.
Right, yes. So in our eyes, he's probably in the hundreds of millions now, right? And what happens is, because of Scott's knowing of Carnegie, he's going to give him the deal to make a steel bridge across the Mississippi. Now, why would you want to make a steel bridge across the Mississippi? How does that make you money making a bridge? How does that make you money? Exactly. You charge people to go across. So instead of them getting on a steamboat, instead of them unloading that train, taking approximately a day or two to move that freight, now all they have to do is pay a fee and go across your bridge. Carnegie's going to have, with his steel being built, the Eads Bridge. Okay? This is still around today. It's pretty cool. So what they do is this. There are 4 sets of tracks underneath this bridge. Okay? 2 going one way, 2 going the other. And then on top of that, you now have a sidewalk and a 4-lane highway on top of this today. So you can still go across this. This is in St. Louis, the Eads Bridge. Okay? Problem was, watching all those failures happen over the last 20 years, most of the people in St. Louis saw this bridge getting built, saw the cost of it, and they basically laughed. They said, there's no way a steel bridge was actually made with just steel beams. This thing's going to collapse in 5 years. So Carnegie's trying to figure out a way to basically make sure that people realize it's safe. Does anyone know what he does? It's a really kind of a silly story. What animal never goes on something that isn't solid?
Cats.
Elephants. So he gets all the circus elephants from the area circus and does an elephant parade across the bridge. And everyone's like, oh yay, well if an elephant does it, it must be good. And everyone goes with it. Seriously. Okay? This was a lesser educated time, okay? And Eads Bridge works, and now everyone wants steel, because think about it. With steel, it now doubles the lifespan of your railroad tracks. So every railroad track in the country is now going to him because he is the largest steel producer in the country. All the buildings need to be refurbished from iron to steel. He's the guy. He literally builds up what we think of as a city skyline now. He's the guy that makes skyscrapers. Okay? He is doing all of that. He completely changes the game because of the material. Let's get this down. All of what we think of for cities today, when you think of an aircraft carrier, when you think of tanks, when you think of automobiles, all this is done because of Carnegie's monster steel mills. okay? Now, over the last 30 years, we've actually changed from US Steel to what other country? What's the country now making the most steel in the world? Anyone know? It's China. China's now making the most steel in the world and shipping it. And the reason being is the same thing. China has more space than the United States. They can make even larger scale steel mills. And the other thing is, because of them being a communist country, they don't have labor unions, so the cost of their labor is lower. So it's actually more cost efficient for a lot of corporations today to get steel shipped to whatever project they're going to, okay, than to get US steel. Hence why Pittsburgh now has turned into basically a sports/vacation city. Seriously. When was the last time you smelled hot molten steel when you were driving through Pittsburgh? Yeah, me neither, okay?
You were not in Pittsburgh yesterday.
Yeah, I was, but I didn't spell it.
Oh. Now, what Carnegie's going to do, he's going to have an absolute steel monopoly, but because he makes such good steel, because he's basically keeping the price relatively decent, no one challenges his monopoly with the government Sherman Antitrust Act. No one touches it. J.P. Morgan, the famous banker, he's going to buy all the other competitive steel companies, and he's going to buy out Carnegie Steel. Andrew Carnegie was basically the ultimate sell-high guy. He sells off his company and becomes one of the richest people in the world, just as within 2 years, the federal government attacks the monopolies. So he sells it perfectly. What he does is this: he sells off his company for approximately, in our eyes, $325 billion.
Oh my lord.
In our eyes, $325 billion. He then takes that money, invests it all in gold bonds, not the powder, okay? And, and throughout the rest of his life, he has a daily allowance that he could spend of approximately then $250,000
A day?
a day. He could spend $250,000 a day if he wanted to.
That'd be overwhelming.
Yeah,
You must say.
yeah.
You just buy
Yeah. He's the guy that makes it. He's so rich. He wanted to hang out with his other wealthy buddies, so he makes a hunting club and buys 10,000 acres of hunting land.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He liked music, so he decides to make the New York City Carnegie Hall. He makes the Carnegie Science Center. He makes a university, Carnegie Mellon, because he wanted to help out Pittsburgh. Like, he literally bought all the big infrastructure things you think of in Pittsburgh. Yeah, that's how rich he was.
In this hunting club, start to think where you just like let them
Global
go.
On a global scale, what did he do to affect
Yeah,
the rest of the world?
yeah. They
Really make a
had
difference
their
when
own
they
domestic
did
zoo.
Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
They basically let out like top stags, deer, etc. And then you go hunt it. Yes.
Larger global scale.
Go ahead.
More important parts of life. You know?
Now, John D. Rockefeller
And James.
Rockefeller hits an industry right at its base. Question?
What you ask him?
Get this all down. Now, where does the first oil hit happen in the United States by steam engine? Do you know?
Texas.
Oh, Ravenville.
It is.
Titusville. Drake's Well.
Titusville, at Drake's Well. Drake's Well is the first oil found by steam engine. Okay? You then have other towns pop up nearby Titusville, and like Oil City and things like that. A boom town happens where the oil is found. The town is now, it's a ghost town, literally. It's a state park that has all the old buildings from the 1860s and 70s there. You can go tour there. Yeah, right there, yeah. The town is called Pit Hole. And you can now go there. but more or less, it has no one lives there anymore. Because the thing was, is though Drake's Well is the first oil found, definitely was not the biggest pool, okay? Most of the oil we think of in the United States today comes from the Gulf of Mexico by ocean drilling, not dwelling, be hard to live there, and Texas. The most oil actually in the United States is in what state?
Alaska.
Alaska.
That boy.
But we're not there quite yet. So Texas and Oklahoma's oil industry starts booming. The catch here is this. When you drill and hit oil by steam engine, the pressure of the oil coming out of the tectonic plates, you're going to lose approximately 20 to 30% of the oil by just the geyser that happens before you can actually get the oil and barrel it. Rockefeller doesn't want to do that aspect of it because he thinks of it kind of as a waste. So what he decides to do is he makes corporations for refining the oil. Okay? And how oil is refined is you take the raw crude oil and it goes in what's known as a frac tower. And a frac tower, when you cook the oil, different parts of the oil is going to separate. So the lowest level is for basically like axle grease products, things like that. Then you've got petroleum jellies. Then you've got oil, basically like engine oil you think of today. Then you have gasoline. And then finally at the very, very top is kerosene. Kerosene burns clear. So here's kind of an example. Prior to people using kerosene for lighting and for heating, if you had candles inside this room, we would have to clean the ceilings every month because of soot and carbon buildup on the ceilings. Just because of basically the ash and soot that's in the air. Kerosene's going to become clean burning, and that's what Rockefeller is going to sell for approximately 25 years. He's going to be selling kerosene and oil products that are going to light up and change all the factories. Prior to oil becoming a commonplace, the only way to lubricate the gears and things inside the factories was whale oil. So it's literally smelled like burning fat death, okay? Has anyone ever accidentally put like Crisco or olive oil or vegetable oil on a burner on accident and catch the fire? It smells awful, okay? So imagine that like all day, right? Just
She slips on the phone.
this is now going to stay on because crude oil is going to stay on these gears much longer. Kerosene's going to burn much cleaner. And he's going to be the person creating the oil industry. All of, and I'm telling you this, all of the gasoline companies and oil companies you know, all of them were owned by Rockefeller before his monopoly broke. All of them. The only one he doesn't have that we now see common is BP. That's it. All the other ones he owned. All of them. Question?
When did they discover diesel?
Diesel's going to come up around the 1890s, 1910s. Let's see, what's kind of interesting is that. So he's using kerosene for lighting houses. He's using the oils to lubricate the factory things. What he's dumping is gasoline. He can't figure out what to do with gasoline. No one knows what to do with gasoline. They haven't made a combustion engine. What they were using for combustion engines, they were actually using grain alcohol. But they didn't know what to do with gasoline. So they were literally dumping it in Lake Erie. Okay, seriously, dumping it in Lake Erie. And around the 1890s, when cars started using gas, he then is going to have another major investment in things. By 1920, he is the richest person on earth. He surpasses Carnegie. And by 1924, they're eventually going to break up his oil companies into 50 different companies. That's how big his oil industry was. By 1900, he owns 95% of oil refining in the world. The world.
So the Rockefeller Center named after?
Yes, he built it.
Oh.
Yes.
Himself.
well,
Himself.
I forgot
Was he
it.
even
Grand
president
Central
ever?
Station, New York City,
Did he make
Vanderbilt made that.
That doesn't
To
matter.
basically be his
How cool
ultimate,
is this
basically like,
president?
hub for trains.
So was
Question on it?
Wasn't like, the Rockefeller Center and like the Empire State Building, shut up. Wasn't it trying to like, wasn't there a competition to see who could build the biggest building between like Carnegie
Yeah.
and Vanderbilt?
What is that?
Yeah, they had continuous, basically like spending rivalries, kind of like Mark Cuban and Donald Trump a little bit. They were trying to see like who would surpass each other.
Who's richer, Mark Cuban or Donald Trump?
I believe right now, well, for sure, we know what Mark Cuban's current wealth is. We don't know what Trump's wealth is.
The picture was like when Donald Trump hears that
Let me get this now.
they're paying $85 an hour for people to work on the wall. Donald Trump and his family working on the wall.
Nice.
What?
Yeah, because we know for a fact that Trump is indeed a billionaire, but he's currently not making over $1 billion per year. More or less, we're probably thinking like he makes somewhere between 250 to $500 million. Yes, I know, everyone's like, well, yeah, that's still a crap load of money. True, but there's other people making just humongous amounts of
How
money.
much does Cuban make?
The problem is it depends on basically like what's his franchise doing. And another thing
Not
is
Broad
that
Street. Yogi
he
Berra
has
dropped
all these
32.
other businesses on top of his, on top of his franchises.
How did you get
Shark
rich
Tank.
again?
What's that?
How did you get rich?
He basically was, he had 4 or 5 different corporations doing businesses by the age of 20. And he got his first million doing that. Then he sold off all those companies, and I forgot what he solidified, and then he became a billionaire. Then he bought the Mavericks. What other franchise he owned?
It's just lucky.
Mavericks and something else.
It's just luck.
Is it an NBA team?
Wow, he owned 2 NBA teams, dude.
I know, is there enough?
Stupid.
No.
Come at him, come
I
at him.
think there's a soccer.
The soccer?
There's one word.
Thanks.
Mistaken.
Now, how these guys make all this amount of wealth is 2 different ways. You have vertical or horizontal integration. Now, why are they basically one or the other? So if this is your factories, this is where you get your supplies, and then this is where your stuff gets transported. Vertical integration means this. You buy out your supplier and your transport, and now it's all you. An example of this would be Walmart, okay? Walmart owns their own clothing companies. If you've ever seen like Faded Glory, that's one of the Walmart clothing companies. And what they do is they get that at a lower cost because well, they own it, right? And that gets sent to their stores. And then you've had that shipped out. There's Walmart trucking companies, just owned by Walmart. This is why Walmart is such a dominant force, is because they own both their shipping products plus their raw materials and things like that. So all of their clothing, they make huge amounts of money off of. Their great value knockoff brand makes a ton of money off it, because more or less what happens is this, and they won't tell you this, but it's essentially how it goes. They have deals with Prego, Ragu, all these different companies, Bob Evans, whatever. It's the same stuff, they just put a Walmart label on it, and they sell it for 20 to 30 cents cheaper than per dollar. All they do. There's really nothing different with it. You're basically going off of the label at Walmart. Question?
I was just gonna ask if I can use your from this screen, but
Yeah. Horizontal integration is when you buy out your competitors, okay? One of the examples for buying out your competitors, and it's the last thing today, you get that horizontal integration of monopoly. Horizontal integration would be like Best Buy. Does anyone remember Circuit City or Media Play?
Yeah.
Okay. In 2004, Best Buy bought out Circuit City and Media Play at the same time. Because they sell the same technological products, they can basically relabel those stuff and put them in their stores. It's none of the hostile takeover. And what they do is they literally say, how much do you want? We're going to take over your corporation. And the CEO basically kind of jokingly says, oh, this much. And Best Buy gives them the check, okay? And that's how that works. This is why Circuit City and Media Play do not exist anymore. It's because Best Buy bought them out. Best Buy has basically become the go-to for most electronics. Yes, there are other electronic stores, but more or less Best Buy has become the dominant species here.
What happened to Radio Shack?
What's that? They are still floundering. Problem here is this, Radio Shack used to be the go-to place for cell phones, batteries, radio supplies, and stereo upgrades. The catch here is, most people don't care anymore about having the monster stereos in their house because of companies like Boss and things like that. That you don't have to upgrade your stereo because it's already to that level. You know, you never seen those? They're basically high-end, they're basically like high-end entertainment stereos. No, they're actually small, but they come out, they have a really, really good quality sound, and they have a sound.
Just like Beats, really high quality, great prices.
Yeah, they make beats for like $4.50.
Really?
Yeah, it's like super cheap. It's like
Most expensive one.